Hey guys, James here again, and today I wanted to make a quick video on my early impressions of Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, the new platform fighter featuring some of our favorite Nicktoons. As a kid who grew up on Smash and Nicktoons, I was really hyped for this game, and while I do think the gameplay itself is fun, I am a bit disappointed overall. Full disclaimer, these impressions are based on a couple of hours of gameplay, and I'm sure as I learn mechanics and whatnot, I'll enjoy the game more, but I do have to say that the game just feels pretty bare bones. It honestly just feels unfinished, and a lot of the polish you'd expect in any game, indie or AAA, just doesn't seem to be there. Quite frankly, this game feels like an alpha that they decided to release for early access. So all that being said, I actually think the core combat can actually be pretty fun and is really difficult, but it definitely still has some issues which need to be worked out. They give you a nice array of moves with different versions of weak, strong, and special attacks, and they also give you an assortment of aerial moves as well as some running attacks. The characters' movesets are actually pretty funny and interesting, although I do feel like some of the non-special moves feel fairly similar across different characters. They have a bunch of different techs and mechanics in the game, like wave dashing, air dashing, strafing, grabbing while even in midair, and watching some higher level players, it's pretty clear that the potential skill ceiling and competitive play can be pretty crazy. Because of all these different techs too, the gameplay can feel really fast paced and punishing, although a negative of that, in my opinion, is that it might make it harder for casual players to enjoy. The game might actually be reminiscent of the Brawl mod Brawl Minus, where every character becomes super OP. You can very easily get comboed and then wrecked, so there's potential for skill to shine. Part of the fast pacing is also the fact that every character just seems to be broken, and has at least one absolutely ridiculous move, and there are some moves which seem to kill just super easily. It's a bit janky though and doesn't always feel smooth. Characters feel kind of stiff and like they don't really run across the stage very well. Some of the hitboxes are also a bit weird and the animations for some characters just don't seem very well done. I found some of the controls to be a bit unintuitive too. For example, going down from platforms uses the jump and then down button on the Joy-Con, which feels a bit weird to me. I get why they did it, but again, it's just a little bit strange. Another thing I found a bit odd was the fact that you pretty much had unlimited blocks, but no dodge or roll functions. Maybe these are just things I need to get used to. I also found the death zones on stages to be pretty unforgiving. On some stages, it's like you touch the edge of the screen and you're dead automatically without much opportunity to recover. In fact, recovery in general is not super easy by design, and I found once you're off the stage, it can be really hard to make it back against decent opponents. Again, I think the gameplay itself is actually pretty fun. It just needs some smoothing out, and after watching some higher level players, it's obvious that the game has potential for competitive play. The real issue with the game is everything outside of the combat. For one thing, I think some of the stages just really suck. Most of them are fine, if not a bit uninspired, and they have 4 in particular which they singled out for competitive play, but there are some which I just avoid at all costs. In particular is this really bad Pokey Floats knockoff where you pretty much don't even fight each other and are instead fighting the stage. Some stages also just felt too small, especially if you were to play with 4 players. The overall presentation also just isn't very good. The menu and UI is pretty bland, the final winner and score screen isn't very satisfying. There's no alternate color schemes for characters, so if you have duplicates you have to rely on looking at the color plate above your character. The sound design as a whole could use some work. The music's okay, maybe a bit generic and could use some more intensity. The announcer's also pretty boring. The impact of the actual moves is solid, I guess, if not a bit generic, but I can't help but feel like there's just something missing. I know they showed from the start they weren't going to have voice lines, but quite frankly, I think it's somewhat embarrassing for Nickelodeon to allow the game to be released without any. I don't know if it was from licensing or budgetary reasons, but not even having grunts or anything just contributes to the feeling of hollowness while playing the game. Really though, I just want to hear Nigel Thornberry say, "Smashing." The online play is actually pretty decent, although I did run into some issues with disconnects and even having the game crash. Thinking back now, I probably should have gotten the game on PC, but I got it on Switch just in case I wanted to bring it easily to a friend's place to play. The arcade mode, which is pretty much the only single player offering, is so basic that it's painful. You just play through a series of fights and that's it. What's so dumb about it is the fact that before every fight, the characters spawn in with a text box as a phrase, and it's just so out of place. There's also no special interactions between characters from the same shows. There's no bosses or any variation in between runs. Overall, just very disappointing if this is the main single player offering. People might also disagree, but I personally found the roster slightly disappointing. It was a bit strange to me how they decided to have 3 SpongeBob characters, 3 Avatar characters, 3 TMNT characters, 2 Loud Family characters, but then there's no representation from shows like Fairly Odd Parents, Rocket Power, Rocko's Modern Life, Jimmy Neutron, Teenage Robot, Doug, Chalk Zone. And look, I'm not saying all these shows are massive hits and deserve characters, but I at least think they could have led to some pretty creative character designs. I think I read somewhere they plan on 2 more free characters, and I'd be pretty disappointed honestly to see if some of the future characters are stuck behind DLC paywalls. Overall, I just found the game disappointing because the combat itself, while not perfect, is actually decent and can be very satisfying and intense. Again, I think there's a super high skill ceiling, and I think it'll reward people who actually put in the time to get better. The problem is the game just feels totally unfinished and like they had to release it to get more funding. In my opinion, the game is not worth $50 in its current state, and I probably would advise people to wait for it to be $25 or less if they want it. If I had to give the game a score, I'd give it a 2.9 out of 4, which I know sounds like me being pedantic, but as much as I want to say it's a good game, I think it just doesn't have everything a full release should. I'll definitely whip it out to play with friends and mess around, but it's pretty hard to justify ever playing this over Smash in my opinion, unless you focus mainly on online play. In my opinion, there's a solid foundation here since the core gameplay is at least fun, but I likely will let the game be patched and tweaked before seriously revisiting again in the future. But hey, that's just me. Let me know down below what you think. Have you tried Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, and what'd you think of it? And of course, if you enjoyed the video, please do consider hitting that like or subscribe button to help out the channel, and as usual, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace.